looking at chapter 10 of your book, How Can We Learn to Innovate? You've been involved with New Christian Communities for over 20 years. What would your advice be? How would you summarize this?
Well, let me tell you the story of Caroline. She was in northwest London. She was a church girl, but she was dissatisfied because her church was not connecting to some recent migrants in the locality. Mm-hmm. And so she explored what she might do about it. And as she explored, she came up with the idea of having an afternoon tea during which these recent arrivals in London, they came from Sri Lanka, during which they could practice their English. And so she told a fantastic story about this that really persuaded some of these recent arrivals, these immigrant, particularly the women, that this was going to be something worth coming to. The story spread. This was a process of amplification. Mm-hmm. And then when the initiative had started, the initiative continued to evolve. It didn't get stuck because it was sitting on what we call the edge of chaos, which is the borderline between order and chaos. And so because it was sitting on that sort of borderline, there was room for new stuff to emerge. And as this new stuff emerged, that included a bit of Christian input, eventually, slowly, people's lives were transformed. So those are some of the overlapping processes involved in innovation: holy dissatisfaction, exploration, storytelling, amplification because the idea spreads, edge of chaos because you never stand still, and transformation. Now, gosh, that must sound an awful lot and probably totally overwhelming. But here's the plug. If you want to see those different elements unpacked, then just read this chapter in the GodSend book and they're explained more fully. But Caroline is the story I used to illustrate them because she did such a brilliant job.
I'm just wondering what it is about great stories that captures people, what it is, in your view, what was it about Caroline's story that convinced people?
Well, the thing was about Caroline was actually she didn't tell one story. She told 3 different stories to 3 different audiences. And this is the thing that makes a story work. It connects with your particular audience. So the 3 stories, they're all consistent, but they connected in a different way to each audience. So, for example, to her church, she told the story, for over 100 years, we've supported overseas mission. Well, overseas has come to our doorstep. What are we going to do about it? To the mothers, she said, welcome to this part of London. Come to an English afternoon tea where you can learn English. And then to herself, she told a 3rd story. She said, in Jesus, God went out to people. What am I trying to do? In the strength of the Spirit, I'm trying to go out to people too. So there were 3 stories that connected with the particular audience that she was trying to talk to. And my observation is people who lead these new Christian communities, often they're really great at telling stories. They do it instinctively because we're all storytellers, but actually their stories could be quite a bit better if they thought really carefully about the audience they were talking to and said, what would be the story that would connect with them? What would really appeal to them in what I'm doing? And focus a story on that.
A bit of their self-interest, each person's, yes, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a great phrase I came across. People follow stories rather than leaders. People follow stories rather than leaders. So if you want to get people to volunteer to help you, tell a good story that connects with your potential volunteers. If you want people to come to your initiative, tell them a story that appeals to them so that they'll come. And this is a great way to develop your initiative, because if you start telling stories to people about what you plan, and they all go, oh, it's a bit boring, and you see them glazing over, eyes glazing over, they're looking around the room and so on, then it's never going to work. But if they get really excited by your story, then that's a way of testing out whether God is calling you to this. And, you know, if they're getting excited, this might work.
So you've also talked about amplification. You've talked about edge of chaos, which is a really interesting concept. And I couldn't help but think of all those people who, in different areas, they'll start something and they want to organize everything. And there has to be a routine, there has to be an order because it helps us function well. You know, and you're almost suggesting, don't do that?
Well, almost, not quite really, because you do need organization and you do need structures and frameworks. But what happens is that sometimes people are so organized that they kind of stifle change. There's no room for change. And that's a problem. But you don't want to go to the other extreme and not have any organization or any rhythms or any routines, because then if things are changing all the time, people get exhausted and the volunteers don't know where they're coming or going. And, you know, the whole thing just eventually falls apart. So the phrase edge of chaos is that sweet spot in the middle. You're organized, but not so organized that things can't change. And Caroline really exemplified that, because she started her, you know, with her helpers. They started this language cafe and they got into a routine. You know, people arrived, they served tea, they gave them topics to talk about at their table, they cleared up afterwards. But when she and I met, and she said to me, she said, Mike, I don't know what to do next. You see, she was wanting change and open to change. So I said, well, Caroline, you've got a team, haven't you? I didn't know what you should do next. So I just said, we've got a team. Why don't you get the team to pray for some of these women? And they went back, and the idea they came up with a prayer board. They invited the women to post prayer requests on their prayer board. And then they started talking about their prayer requests. And that then gave them permission to increase the sort of spiritual content of the topics that they gave them to discuss in their tables. So the thing about Caroline was that she was a little bit restless. You know, we've got something, but I want more. I want more. And being on the edge of chaos is that sense, I want more. I want more. So yeah, maybe you've got a fantastic cafe or something else that you started. It's all going well. Ask yourself, well, what's more here? And when you start asking yourself that, you then draw towards the edge of chaos.
I love the idea that with your encouragement, Caroline went back to the group to ask the ladies what to do. And actually, that takes us back to the heart of what you've been suggesting throughout the whole book, is to develop that community, develop those relationships. So actually, if that is kept as the focus, you know, you naturally find the next step. So that's brilliant.
You need that. This is absolutely true, because people often say to me, you know, what should we do about this? And my stock reply is, go and ask the punters, go and ask the people in your community. If you don't know what to do, ask them, because they are quite likely to come up with the answer. And if you feel, oh, I don't know them well enough to be able to ask them, then spend time getting to know them better. Because all the time, if you want a real community that really works, all the time, you're going to be doing stuff with other people, not for them. And therefore, you've got to ask their advice and be humble enough to take their advice and walk with them. So you're absolutely right, Nudrat. This is the key to everything.
That's brilliant. So we've been talking about how we can learn to innovate, and those three important things of telling a good story, which is told with your heart and feeling, which means the story is amplified, and we exist at the edge of chaos because that allows change and development to happen, almost encouraging that little bit of restlessness. To find out more, read the chapter. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Nudrat.